I agree with Tom. We need to pray for the Dodgers. Um, so I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, just outside of Cleveland in a little town called Macedonia. And when I was a baby and teething, my parents would put brandy on my gums to soothe me from causing them heartache. Little did they know the heartache I was about to cause them. So, my mom and dad loved each other. They were together. They were together until my father passed. They were married 59 years. They lived together, worked together, did everything together. We had a great childhood growing up. My dad drank a lot. And right around 12, my dad had this strange habit of collecting the airplane bottles of booze, and he had them all on a shelf. I don't know why anybody collects them, but it gave me an opportunity. So when I was 12, I thought it would be a great idea to take a couple bottles from the back of the shelf and drink them. And so when I was 12, that's when I first started drinking. I also joined the Boy Scouts at that time, and my first real camp out with the Boy Scouts, the older kids came knocking on my hut that we built because it was like wilderness survival, and they asked if I wanted to get high, and I'm like, sure. And so I got high at 12 in the Boy Scouts, and there is not a merit badge for that. So, but we caused mischief that night, and I was off and running. So from the time I was 12, all that I wanted to do was drink and smoke pot and come up with different combinations of alcohol, pot, coke, mushrooms, acid, to get me to the level of the fun that I thought I had those first couple of times. I'm 14, 15, standing out in front of liquor stores with a $20 bill begging somebody to buy me a 12-pack. And people did it. And I can't even imagine that now, right? But they did it. We stole from our parents. We stole from my friends' parents. We stole, whatever it took to get drunk, to get high, we did it. I had a great childhood, like I said. We traveled around a lot. My dad raced dragsters, and every weekend we'd be at the drag strip, and that was my church. The prayer before the races is what I learned of church. So I didn't know much. And it became an obsession with me. I started drinking in the shower. I started drinking all the time. Like, all I wanted to do was drink. I would fill the Wishbone salad dressing bottles with clear alcohol and bring that to school. And I would drink in class. By the time I got to high school, I would get stoned under the bridge to the practice field while we played football, while the others played football, and I would get high. On the away games in Ohio, it's very cold, and we had these great big parkas, and I would put fried chicken in one pocket, and I had my cooler filled with screwdrivers. So I would drink that and eat fried chicken while everybody else played football. I always like to joke that I played 3 positions in football: guard, tackle, and end. I sat on the end of the bench, I guarded the water, and tackled anybody that went near it. I loved sports. I was pretty good at baseball, and I went pretty far until I couldn't. I just ran out of talent, and I was just more interested in getting loaded. I had dreamed of creating the Smokeable America Foundation because I thought it would be a great idea, because if everybody just smoked a bowl, we'd all be happy, right? I dreamed of one day sitting on my front porch and drinking and smoking with my kids, and it got really bad. My parents continually kicked me out of the house time and time again. And I kept coming back. I was like a cockroach, man. I just kept coming back, kept coming back, kept coming back. So somewhere around, so I barely graduated high school, and I couldn't keep a job because I would do things like go to lunch and get drunk and not go back to the job. There's many a jobs I've left at lunch that I haven't been back at yet. I sold cars for a while, and I would go and have a liquid lunch, and then one time I crawled in the back of the car into the trunk to show this family how big the trunk was. Needless to say, they let me go shortly after that meeting. It's all I wanted to do. Like, my whole purpose was to be drunk, loaded, and not feel a thing. No matter how many times my parents left, no matter how many times I got pulled over, which I got pulled over about 21 times, 22 times before I got my first ticket. I was really good at talking myself out of tickets. In those days, I would get out of the car, because I had beer in there, so I didn't want them to see it, and I would walk back, what's going on, and talk myself out of it. And then 5 miles later, I'd be in a ditch. I crashed a lot of cars. I kept partying to a level that I started losing friends. Nobody wanted to hang out with me anymore. It wasn't fun to party with me anymore. I kept outgrowing the people where they wanted to party. By the time I was 21, I already had a tab at this place called Zach's Pub in Macedonia, Ohio. And I probably shouldn't have said that online here. It's probably closed. But I had a tab, and I was, by the time I actually turned 21, I'd been there for 5 or 6 years. Small town in Ohio. So I had no friends. I couldn't keep a job, and I was done. I would throw these legendary parties, and one time we had like several cords of wood. It's Ohio. It gets cold in the wintertime. We had a lot of wood. Put it all in this fire, and the fire was higher than the telephone lines, and the fire department shows up, the police show up. We ran out of wood. I'm throwing my mom's furniture out in the thing. There's a huge burn hole in the middle of the yard. Like, I was not, like I told you, I tormented my mother and father. So at some point, they got tired of kicking me out because, like I said, I kept coming back. I know what keep coming back means because that's what I did. And so they got tired of kicking me out, and they moved. They moved out. It's true. They moved to New York and left me in Ohio, which was a really bad idea because now I have a house and I can do whatever I want. And I did. And it got really, really, really bad. And life was no fun any longer. I had no choice. All I knew was how to drink and use. But when I started to drink and use, it made me cooler, sexier, stronger, smarter. Like, it solved all my problems. I felt like a better person when I was drinking and using. I mean, how many of us have said when we got pulled over, I drive better when I'm drunk, right? Well, you don't drive better when you're drunk when you're in a ditch and your exhaust is at the top of the hill. I've woke up in snowbanks. One time I sold my plasma blood for $40 so I could buy a bag, and my father found it and poured it out in the lawn. Like I said, everything in my life was to that. I couldn't keep friends. I was starting to get pretty lonely. And I got another job as a car salesman, and I have this liquid lunch, and I had gotten pulled over for the first ticket I got for driving while under the influence, and 6 months to the day, I got pulled over again. So I'm at the job, and I'm drunk, and they called me Skippy, because I was always jumping around, and I had this hair that flopped all around, and I I leave the dealership because they asked me to leave for the day. Because again, I was drunk and causing a scene at the dealership. And I'm driving home, and I stop at a stoplight. I want to go left to go to a bar, and there's a cop on the other side of the street facing this way. And his lights are on, and he had pulled someone else over. Well, my great thinking thought, if I go left, he's going to know I'm drunk, and he's going to pull me over. So I sat there for a minute and took a nap. And I wake up, and he's not there. You know, as far as I know, it might have been a cycle of lights, 3 cycle. I have no idea. I was taking a nap. And so I go left when an arrow turns, and all of a sudden he lights me up. He had enough time to turn around, get behind me, and there he was. So I asked him very kindly to shoot me. Well, my life was over. You know, this is the second time I got pulled over. I'm going to jail. Like, I got nothing. My parents moved out. I have no friends. I got nothing. Like, I'm done. I'm beat up. I'm done. So I ask him to shoot me, and he won't shoot me. But of course, I'm drunk, and I go through the test, and I'm drunk, and I go to jail. Well, the problem is when you out-party all your friends, you got nobody to call. So I had nobody to call that night. And I'm in jail. I got nobody to call. I'm drunk, and I'm trying to remember phone numbers, because that's how we had to used to do it, was remember them. And I finally remember somebody's phone number, and I call them, and they came and got me out of jail that night and took me to my house. And I'm done. Like, I don't know what to do. And all I want to do now is just die, because my life is over. I got nothing. I'm depressed. I'm like, I don't know of another way. And the way that I found that made me cooler, smarter, stronger, braver, sexier, stopped working. So I had nothing. So I grabbed my brother's gun, and I'm sitting at the table drinking, and I want to shoot myself, and I can't, because I have this dog named Jake, and it's just Jake and I. So I can't shoot myself, because if I do, then Jake's going to have to clean that up, right? Or Jake's going to have to deal with that. And I can't do that to Jake. So in those days, I dialed 0 on the phone. And for you youngsters, that meant you called the operator, and a live person would pick up on the other end. And I yell at this lady for like 30 minutes. Because my life is over, and no one understands, and I can't continue doing what I'm doing. So the next thing I know, she hooks me up with this facility in Port Hoonimini, California. It's actually a place called Steps, and I still had insurance because they let me go home that day, but they didn't fire me that day. So they're going to fly me to California to get help. So the greatest thing about this is I'm from Ohio. All I want to do in my whole life is go to California. There's beaches and there's beautiful blondes everywhere, right? So this is going to work out for me. The problem is I got no car because that's been impounded. I got Jake, and my parents are in New York. So I call my parents, and they drove home 3 hours to come and get me and take me to the airport the next morning so that I can end up in California. So I get dressed up like I am tonight, right? Because I'm going to treatment. I got to look good. And I fly out to California, and there's somebody there with a little sign that says Craig, you know, and they pick me up at LAX, and I'm scared to death. Absolutely scared to death. And we stop at Big Boy and have some Big Boy, and which was different out here than it was in Ohio, and it wasn't as good, and kind of unhappy about that. And we end up at Steps, and now I'm in this place, and I meet this guy named Robin. He's like, "You don't look beat up enough to be here." And I'm like, "Well, I am." And I go into Steps, and I'm thinking, this is great. Now I'm going to learn how to drink and use successfully, and my life will be back on track. Well, the problem with being in a rehab is they don't actually teach you to drink and use successfully. They tell you you can't drink and use at all. So I start this journey of recovery. And I'm in this facility, Steps, and I'm going through the thing, and they give us a big book, and they're taking us to meetings. And this is how my recovery starts. About 15 days into it, you're allowed to go out to meetings. You can call people. Had to ask for their number, which is really embarrassing because, I'm cool and I don't need to do that, but I had to do that. So I'm calling, I call this guy. He's got 90 days on me, and I think to myself, maybe, just maybe, he's not lying. Maybe somebody can go 90 days. And he's my first sponsor with 90 days. But I chose him because he had a boat and he liked to water ski, which I like to do as well. I don't know if he worked the steps, I don't know any of that, but he had a boat and he liked to water ski, so that's how I chose him. And as it turns out, they never taught me how to drink and use successfully. By the end of the program, I had to make a decision. So I decided that I would take my plane ticket home, cash that in, and get a month's rent at Kepra House on the Avenue. So I'm this small, scared little white boy from a little town in Macedonia, and now I'm living on the Avenue in Kepra House. And that was a whole new world. I think my first roommate told me how many people he stabbed. Everybody's got tattoos. I'm scared out of my mind. But I'm willing to do that. I slept with my eye open, one eye. And I'm in Kepra House, and now I have 30 days to try to figure out what I'm going to do. And so I'm going to meetings every day. I'm walking or getting rides. I'm calling people on the payphone. I'm trying to find a job. I'm walking all over downtown Ventura trying to find a job so I can stay in California. It's about day 28. I don't have a job, and I got nothing. I've got 58 days sober at this time, and I'm walking down the street and I'm cussing out God because all you people lied to me. You said it was going to get better, or everything was going to work out, I was going to get and here it is, I got none of it. And I go home, and there's a message from me that somebody took from the payphone. Now, that is not something that happens in Kepra House. Nobody takes notes, nobody takes messages from the payphone if it's not for them, right? But they did. And I get this call for an interview on a job. And so I walk down, and I get this job. I'm making $4.25 an hour, folding paper in half by hand. And I couldn't be happier. Because now I can stay, right? Because I knew if I went back home to Ohio that I would fall right back into the same thing that I was. I'm 24 years old. I have no idea how to live on my own. I have no idea how to do anything. But something in these rooms gave me enough hope to believe that something could be better. And I could figure out how to live a life in here. So I get this job on my second day. Nobody shows up. I'm sitting on the curb, and I think they're playing a joke on me, right? Nobody shows up. The boss doesn't show up. The other lady doesn't show up. But I'm so afraid to leave that I sit on the curb. It's 9 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. It's 11 o'clock. It's 12 o'clock. Nobody shows up. And I'm thinking, man, they're playing a crazy trick on me. I thought I had a job. And then the owner comes rolling up, and his wife just had babies in the ER. or in the hospital, so he couldn't come. And the other girl had drama. Somebody popped all 4 of her tires, so she never shows up. So he shows up, he opens it up, and I get this job. And I'm living a good life, right? I go to this camp out up in Santa Barbara, and it's the first time I went camping sober, and I was scared to death because the only way I know how to camp is to grab as much alcohol, booze, and drugs as I can to go camping. But now I'm just bringing a sleeping bag and a tent. I had 100 days at this camp out, and I'm sitting there, and I realized I haven't thought about drinking or using in a little while now. And it kind of clicked. It's like my first spiritual awakening, right? Now, all of a sudden, I know that this maybe is possible. I haven't thought about it in a long time. So I go back and I ask another person to sponsor me who actually had time, and I start working through the steps. But now I'm afraid to work through the steps because there's that 5th step, And I got to tell somebody all the things I did and all the embarrassing things I did and all the humility and all the guilt and all the shame and everything I hated about myself to somebody else. So I got another sponsor. And I worked step 1, 2, and 3. And then got there again, and I got really scared, and I couldn't do step 4. So I didn't get another sponsor, but I stopped doing the steps. And, I get several months, I get a year, and I find out that this convention here does plays. We had this great convention at the Performing Arts Center in Oxnard, and I have no idea why I said I would do it, but I said I would do it. So I go and we rehearse for these plays, and we call them things like Peter Pane and High at Noon and Gross, and there were other things that people could relate to that, this guy named Jay turned them into something about sobriety. And, I'm up there acting in these alcoholic plays, and I'm having a blast, and I'm meeting people, and I'm having fun in recovery. And the one thing that I thought that was not going to happen was I was going to have fun. I thought my life was over here. I thought I was doomed to perpetually go to meetings, and that's it. I thought I'm going to work, I'm going to go to meetings, and life's not going to be that great. But somebody sometime in a meeting said this one word to me that was, no matter what. I cannot drink no matter what. And when I was in treatment, one of the counselors said in the whole group of people, 1 out of 4 of you will make it to 90 days or 6 months, whatever it was at the time. And he said 1 out of 10 of you will make it to a year. I like sports and I like challenges, so I'm like, well, screw it, that's me. I'm going to be the one. And I, without knowing it, joined the No Matter What Club. And what was it? I had about 9 months sober, and I got to go back to Ohio to deal with my DWIs. So it's $77 to leave Ventura and end up in Cleveland, Ohio on a Greyhound bus. And it takes about 77 hours to make that journey. And when you have 9 months sober and you're by yourself on a Greyhound bus traveling across the country, it's not really set up for sober people. But I make it. I get off the bus. My parents pick me up. And the next morning, I go to the judge, and he sentences me. By this time, I had 9 months, so I did steps, I lived in Kepra House, I got into a sober living, and I tell this all to the judge, and he suspends, it was supposed to be like a 9-month sentence, he suspends all of it but 10 days. So I have to go to jail for 10 days. So I'm in Summit County Jail, and I'm grateful it's only 10 days, but once again, here I am in a place where I feel very out of place, and I'm very scared, and I'm giving my apples away and whatever anybody wanted. Because I'm scared. And it's Easter Sunday, and my mom and my grandma come to visit me. And I'm in the Summit County orange jumpsuit, and I'm talking on the phone in between the glass to my mom and my grandma, and I think to myself, I am never, ever going to do this again. So one more time, I say to myself, no matter what, I can't end up here again. And so I get out. I have this $300 truck. It's rusted out completely, and I pack up the few things I have from my house, and I'm heading back to California. So my mom says she's going to join me. So my mom and I set off on this epic road trip across the United States to get me back to Normal, California. And the drive shaft fell out of the truck in Bourbon, Missouri. Right? You can't make that up. So I'm under it. There's semis flying by. I'm trying to duct tape the drive shaft under this thing so I can get it to the next exit. We get it to the next exit, buy another U-joint, put it in, back on the road again. And then the fuel system dies out in Texas somewhere, and I fix that, and then we go to Grand Canyon, and we did the Chevy Chase thing. Wow, we're at the Grand Canyon. Like, look. And off we go. I end up back in California, and I moved into a sober living where, like, I was going to be the guy in charge now. And so this is my life, right? I'm going to meetings. I'm in recovery, and I'm learning how to live. And all these little miracles start happening. Like, my whole life, I always came in second. Like, all the teams I ever was on, football, baseball, whatever, man, like second place. But I kind of got this feeling that, like, every day that I ended up sober, like, I got this first place trophy. And that's kind of what kept me going for the next day. And I'm doing these plays, I'm singing, I'm dancing, I'm having a great time. I met Cliff there. Like, I've known him. Like, I've known people in recovery for over 30 years, and they're still friends. So, living my life, doing the thing. I got this job. I'm having a great time. Like, I'm living in California. I'm going to the beach. I'm sending pictures of myself home and to people in Ohio with me in my shorts on Christmas because I'm in California and you're not. And then it happens. The blonde, blue-eyed girl. And I'm in love. I'm smitten. And she's in recovery, and I'm in recovery, and everybody said it wasn't going to work out. She left after about 6 months and went to Michigan, and now I'm lonely. Like, I really like this girl. But she lives in Michigan, and I live here. So I quit my job, and I drive to Michigan. And I'm an Ohio State fan, right? I grew up in Ohio. Now I'm living in Ann Arbor, Michigan, home of the Wolverines. Not a good situation. I had to switch to the dark side. Now I root for the Wolverines. We lived there 2.5 years, and I lived there 2.5 years with her. And about 7 minutes after she got her diploma, we packed up the Ryder truck and headed back to California again. So it was a great time. But in Michigan, like, the first thing I did was I went to meetings. I also got pulled over because I went right on red, and that's actually not allowed in Michigan. And I talked myself out of that one too in the courtroom because I just moved from California. I don't know. We were always turning right on red. And they actually used that was an excuse, and I got out one more time. Yeah, so I get back. We come back out to California, and I ask her to marry me, and she says yes. And yeah, it was awesome. So yeah, this is my life. This is what I do. We get married, and we have this beautiful wedding on the beach in Santa Barbara, right off the beach, and on it, but not in it. And we pay for it ourselves because we're sober and our families are not. And so we have this great money. We bought a coffee cart so everybody could get amped up on coffees and espressos. And so my family decides to fill the trunks up of the rental cars with beers. Her family goes across the street to the big fancy hotel and drinks over there. And we're in there drinking coffee and having the greatest of times. Then, life happens. We get married, we buy a house, still have this job that I had, years and years ago, and now I'm running the place, and we got 40 people working there, and I'm going to meetings and being of service. I finally worked through all of my steps in California before I left, and then in Michigan, I got another sponsor. We get married, we want to have kids, we have a couple troubles, and then we give up, and then we decide, we're not going to have kids. And then we go to Hawaii for our real honeymoon, which is several years after we actually got married, and then we end up pregnant. And, she ended up pregnant. And we have this, this beautiful daughter. And 3 years later, we have this great son, and we're still both of service. We're still both going to meetings. We're still doing the deal. I started coaching. She started coaching, kids, high schoolers, and it's like life is just great. Like we lose both of her parents, and we have to walk through that. We buy another house. Life is life, right? We're doing all the things that we're supposed to do. And I'm learning how to live sober. And no matter what I've been through in my recovery, the last 4 years of my recovery have been hell. They've been very challenging. So I never wanted to smoke or drink with my kids. They've never seen my wife or I drink or smoke or do anything. And yet alcoholism and the disease of addiction found them. And it was the hardest thing I think I've had to walk through, right? God, it was tearing us apart, and I can't control it, and I want to control it. I know the answer. Don't you know who I am? I have 30 years clean, sober, and why are you doing this to me? And, but it's not me. It has nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with the disease. And we start going to our sister program, Al-Anon, and I start learning other ways now to live my life. And you know what? All of those things that I was thinking, when you point at somebody, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. All of the things that I was afraid of my child drinking and using had nothing to do with me. But it was my pride, my ego, it was all about me. Why can't I control this? Why can't I fix this? Why can't I make this better? I can tell you how to live a better life. But it didn't matter. And so we finally surrender once again in our lives, The surrender is the greatest thing that happens here. I surrendered. I worked the steps. I found this higher power. My first one was the group. because maybe you guys were all doing something that I couldn't. Over time, my faith, my higher power, my God has changed and grown, and my understanding of my higher power has grown and changed. And my higher power has a 100% track record of getting me through every single thing that I have went through, good, bad, or indifferent. It may not be fun while I'm right in the middle of it, but at the end of it, you know who's there blocking the way and knocking people out of it and setting my path is my God, my higher power. And so I surrender my child to this disease, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And so every year, my dad drank a lot, and he drank all the time. And so every year that I got a chip, like tonight, I would send it to my dad. I'd mail it to him. And he carried it around for the whole year until I gave him another one the next year. And he passed away sober almost a year ago. And my mom gave me all of those chips. My child celebrated 2 years of sobriety, and I sent her that 2-year chip that my dad carried around for a year. You know, it wasn't me that had anything to do with it. If I was still involved, she'd probably still be using. But I got out of the way, and I surrendered once again to my higher power. And all of a sudden, you know, God had room to move, and he moved. And, you know, my son wants to go to Norway for a study abroad program, and I'm scared to death. He's going to be 20 years old and living in another country and doing the whole deal. And once again, I need to surrender. He has the same higher power that I have. He has the same God that I have, and he's got the God that's going to take care of him. And I need to surrender to that and let that go and let him live his life. I have been of service in many, many ways throughout the years, and it saved my life. When my father died, when my wife's parents died, the very first people to come and love us, surround us, and hug us were in the program. Everything, every loss, everything that I have celebrated or mourned, someone here has been there with me. You guys have showed me how to live, how to be a productive member of society, how to be a husband, how to be a father, how to be a coworker, how to be a boss. I still have that job that I sat out on that step for 34 years later. It's crazy, right? My wife and I, in 6 days, will be married 26 years. And that's a miracle, right? We're both in the program. This is not what it's supposed to be. And yet somehow here we are doing it. But the fact is that I've done the work. I've put in the time. I've done these steps. I live these steps. And by doing that, my life has changed. By turning my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him and understood him, because I will never understand him, but as I understood him to be in my life right now, he is a caring God. He loves me, and he cares for me. He goes in front of me and helps me. As long as I stay connected, as long as I do the work, it will continue to be that way. The minute I stop doing the work, the minute I stop being involved, it all goes away. I am just as close to the next drink or the next drug as anybody. And constant vigilance is what it is. And no matter what, if I don't drink, if I don't use, tomorrow is going to be a little bit better. Today is going to be a great day. And that's how I live my life today. So I know you came here to hear Sandy, but you heard me, and I hope I hope for those that are new or nearly new or coming back, or that you stay and give this thing a chance, because this is a room full of miracles. This is a gift beyond all measure. And I am so grateful to be sober today, and that's how I made 34 years. So thank you for sharing my birthday with me.